this episode of How to Go Independent. Appreciate you joining us. I have today an interview with a colleague of mine, Brian Ruff. Brian and I have worked together for about 2.5 years. He essentially serves as a junior financial advisor in my business and has helped me with quite a bit of work related to managing our advisor network that I help put together as well. So he's been a great asset to my team. He actually came over, as you'll hear, as an independent advisor in the spring of 2013. So about 3 years ago as I record this. And then a few months later, I found myself in need of some extra help. And so we worked out an arrangement for him to work with and for me. And so I thought he'd have a unique perspective on what it means to go independent, since he's now basically an employee. But we found what I think is a mutually beneficial arrangement, and we've helped grow both of our business interests, and we look forward to working together for a long time, I think. So I thought a conversation with him would be very valuable to hear another way that things might work out. This kind of arrangement and partnership, so to speak, is something that you can develop if you're not beholden to any other organization. And that's just one of many, many examples where I find being independent can allow you to have options that you didn't know existed. So without further ado, we'll get into the interview. One thing I would ask before we get into that is I see the numbers in the show are going up and up, which is great to see, but I haven't gotten much feedback yet. So if you have a chance, shoot me a note at Sean@indyfa.com. That's SEAN at indyfa, INDYFA, as in financialadvisor.com. Love to hear your thoughts or any questions that you'd love to hear addressed in future episodes, as I'm here to hope educate and enlighten as we go along. And here we go. Here's my conversation with Brian. All right, I'm here with Brian Ruff on How to Go Independent. And Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Oh, my pleasure. In full disclosure, Brian is literally getting paid to be here. So that's something to keep in mind. We work together, and so take that for what it's worth. But I think you'll find a lot of good info from our discussion. So, Brian, I wanted to have you on because I think your situation and experience here in the last few years can give people another option that, like you, probably you didn't think of this particular kind of option. I think most of us, if we come up in the traditional world at a big firm where you get trained and everyone is producing on their own, or they're part of a larger team, the idea of having your own practice might be something that people are familiar with, but the idea of kind of crafting something custom and unique is not necessarily out there. So I thought we'd have a conversation and hopefully, a few people will find some value in it. So why don't you first kind of tell us a little bit about what you did before you got into this industry and then why you ended up kind of here and how you got into business.
Yeah. Well, I think I started off basically just as a teacher and coach at a middle school back in my hometown, and was spending a lot of time at work, the old field house, about 80 hours a week. The group I was with was way too graduate assistant like, where we got to spend so many hours analyzing 16, 17, 18-year-olds on the football field, or we wouldn't be able to win. And turns out we didn't win anyway. But so I got an annual review while I was a coach, and basically it told me that I needed to plug in a little more, spend more time up there. And so that got me kind of looking around at other opportunities, and happened to fill out some kind of best companies to work for list that was out there, and Edward Jones popped up. And apparently Edward Jones likes teachers because they can hopefully explain complex ideas to people and kids. And if you can explain complex ideas to kids, then hopefully you can do that to adults as well. So the flexibility of the job kind of appealed to me as well. I was not very familiar with the investment world, but was interested for sure. And so again, I like the flexibility of the financial advisor role. they kind of sold that to me, but they did tell me that, I was going to have to work long hours, maybe even 60 hours a week to get started with my business, and even 60 hours sounded pretty good to me. So I also felt like I knew a lot of people around the town growing up, being a teacher there and also growing up there, and felt like I had a lot of contacts that may be able to make my business successful. So that's kind of the thoughts that I had as going into the business. Again, didn't really have a lot of knowledge about what that was like, besides what they kind of sold me when we did the initial interviews. But they were pretty good. Edward Jones has always been pretty good of telling you, this is going to be hard work in the beginning and build your business till the end. So that's kind of how I got started in the business.
Just for context, what time frame are we talking about that you started?
Let's see, that was 2007.
Oh, good timing.
Yeah, exactly. Peak of the market.
Nothing exciting happened right after that.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And maybe then, if you don't mind, touch a little bit on kind of your experience at Edward Jones and kind of what went well, what didn't, and then kind of what was your next step.
Yeah. When I was with Jones, 2008 was not good, obviously. And, I remember selling my first mutual fund to a family member for $250 in October of 2007, and it was several years before I made him any money. And so basically everything that I sold being a new advisor had gone down in value, and it was pretty tough building a business. And I also, on the personal side, went through a divorce, and that wasn't easy as well, building a business and having to deal with that. So I was offered an office over in South Fort Worth. I took over that office, but quickly kind of learned that wasn't a great time to move, of course, with the market, but also that area was pretty high in foreclosures, and found out that most of my clients, as I was building my business, weren't actually in that location at all. So it didn't really make a difference, I think, where I built it, but I would like to have that. As you know, Jones kind of, you get out and you knock on doors and you build your business. You're a kind of a person that as always sees their face in the local community, that kind of thing. You're kind of a town kind of guy, and I found out that I probably should have stayed where I was, in my original location where I grew up in, because I had a lot more people there, and it was not as tough of a time for that area as maybe it was over where I took over the office. But after a while, after getting that first early push of getting a lot of the people I knew, using a lot of my contacts, I started to accumulate some debt, to cover expenses once the original salary came out, and I kind of started looking around a little bit. I think originally I sat down with a Merrill Lynch branch manager. It's kind of one of those things that, man, it was really going the dark side to go from Edward Jones to Merrill Lynch. But I sat down with the branch manager, had a lunch with him, and even after that meeting, I was thinking, there's no way I'm doing this. There's no way I'm going to Merrill Lynch. I had always moved a lot of accounts over from Merrill Lynch, and was always kind of selling my clients that Edward Jones was different. I was different from most of the Merrill Lynch people, so that was something I had. But they offered some upfront money to move my book, and with some bonuses on the back end if I was successful in moving my book over, and that was a big kind of game changer for me. So I decided.
When you say
go ahead.
Game changer in what way?
That it kind of almost was kind of an opportunity to restart my business. At that time, Jones was kind of going through a transition as well. I had been taught for years and years at Edward Jones to sell away from the fee-based account. That was a bad thing, and a fee-based account was not in the right mind, didn't put the advisor in the right mind to service the client. And so I had moved a lot of fee-based accounts over from other firms, talking about A-shares and that kind of thing, A-share mutual funds. So when I, in about 2008, 2009, at one of the NAS summer regional meetings, they started rolling out the advisory program, the AUM model. And so that kind of maybe told me that there possibly some other things out there that maybe they don't feel like is great now, but if other people can offer them, maybe need to look into that as well. And basically the upfront money just allowed me to, when I said it was a game changer, it was because I could use that upfront money to kind of supplement my income while tried to build a fee-based business, because I could see that was kind of where the industry was going. I also liked that that put me on the same side of the table with a client, and that if the client did well and their accounts grew, then I would be rewarded for it, and I'd also be make sure that that I was doing what was in best interest. I always struggled with, I don't want to do anything for a client just to do something. I wanted to really, and that's a whole different conversation of going into the AUM versus a transaction type model. But
right.
So anyway, the went to Merrill Lynch. The upfront money really helped me kind of reset my focus on my business and kind of skip a lot of those upfront type payments when you have a new account and go to a fee-based model. And I was pretty successful in doing that.
Hey, while you're on that topic, I think why don't you touch on your largest client, kind of that experience of moving over, and one of the benefits. I think that's probably a function of the brands of those two firms, but it also, from my experience, is an observation. Also, is just a matter of sometimes when you're moving firms, regardless of where you're moving from and to, I think clients will say, "Well, I'm moving. I might as well move this too." Why don't you touch on that? I think that's an interesting anecdote about getting new money.
Yeah, that was something that kind of surprised me when I went from Edward Jones to Merrill Lynch. Some of those clients, kind of treated it as a promotion, which I had not kind of looked at. I did have a large account that was more of a managed with a board, and that large account basically told me that when I moved over, that if he's in front of a board and they're talking about investment options for this account, that there's only so much they can do at Edward Jones, and that was a big kind of eye-opening, that I kind of felt like if this guy's actually telling me that, then how many people that I'm with that I'm servicing now are not telling me that? Or how many prospects have I come across that felt that same way? And so that was kind of an eye-opening thing for me that I was not prepared for. And then when I brought that account over, sure enough, the account almost doubled in size within the first year that I was at Merrill Lynch.
Gotcha.
So that was something I was definitely not counting on with my move, but it really helped, especially at Merrill Lynch, with a lot of the back-end bonuses on how we've done. Is I immediately hit most of those back-end bonuses from that one account.
That's great. Yeah, I remember that you told me that story. That's pretty interesting. Okay, and then as you got settled in, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of your kind of the highlights of your experience at Merrill, and then how and when you decided to start looking for something else.
Yeah, I think I could tell immediately when I got there was a little different culture than Edward Jones. Edward Jones is famous for their training and a lot of hand holding that goes on there. I didn't really get that at Merrill Lynch. It was kind of like, here's your desk, here's your phone, good luck. And I felt that it wasn't like they sold me like they were gonna. They kind of treated it like it was your own business. Go find it. But there was definitely just a different culture there. There was a lot of turnover among trainees there. That was surprising that they would just really throw a lot of people out there and see what stuck. The biggest things that happened while I was there were a meeting where they changed our payout grid and the account level we get paid on right before Christmas. So that was Merry Christmas to us. So they dropped our payout by 2%, and they also took $100,000 accounts and changed that $100,000 limit. So if you had an account that was under $100,000, you weren't paid on it. Merrill Lynch still got paid on it, but you weren't paid on it. And even though the client was still billed, Merrill Lynch still made their money. You weren't paid on it. So, and that was explained to me, the $100,000 limit when I came over. It wasn't a big deal because we could basically household account. So if you had people that were at different places, and they still they lived at different spots. They didn't know each other even, but they worked at the same place. That could be considered a household. So a lot of those rules changed, and they also upped that limit from 100,000 to 250,000, and then they removed all those householding rules. So if somebody wasn't a brother, sister, husband, wife, or anything like that, they didn't have any blood relationship, you could not household them, and that changed a lot. Luckily, like most of my accounts there were grandfathered in, but even since, I believe that's changed at Merrill Lynch. And with that large account that I mentioned before, that was kind of the final straw in starting to look around a little bit, is that I didn't have I was looking for more flexibility with that large account and wanted to move it to a fee-based. It was not like that when I was there, and I couldn't get the asset fee low enough to really justify moving that account over to fee-based. It just wasn't what was best for the client, and I really wanted them, since there was a board-type structure, that I wanted them to be able to go to that board if there was ever a case of, why are you in this fee-based account, and show them that I was actually saving them money. So that was kind of the final straw that I kind of said, you know what, I was a little tired of kind of a corporate structure getting to change something whenever they wanted. I got my assistant changed at one point as well. I had a great assistant, and they basically pulled her away and sent her to somebody else, and kind of plugged somebody in that wasn't too interested in helping me. So that was a big deal, is that I kind of felt like they could change what was going on at any time. That was a big realization that I made, that, you know, this is, if you're not a huge corner office type producer, then you're not going to be able to make those type changes, or you're not going to be able to have any say in those type changes. They're going to do what's best for the overall bottom line. And that was a big, because I always kind of wanted to be my own boss, or have my own company. So that's kind of what made me make the move.
Gotcha. And as you started to look around, can you touch on kind of the options that came to mind, and, you know, maybe go through your decision-making process and a little bit of how you ended up where you are?
Yeah, I looked around a little bit. I was even considering getting out of the business as a whole. I was basically just kind of wanting to find something that would even out my income a little more. It felt like I was, with the draw and kind of how it works at Merrill Lynch, is that I'd have a really good month and I'd pay back all my draw, and then I'd have a couple of bad months, and it was basically just paying them back, is what it kind of felt like. I didn't see a lot of upside, that I was always kind of just hanging on for those bonuses, is what it kind of felt like. So I wanted something that kind of stabilized my income. I went to interviewed at Fidelity, looking at possibly a manager role there. And, you know, since I turned that down more because I don't think being, you know, going, I guess it was almost 6 years in the business at that time. So this was around late 2012, 2013. You know, being able to set my own schedule was big for me. I enjoyed, you know, being able to pick my kid up from school if I wanted to do that, or go and eat lunch, that kind of thing. So if I was working in an office, you know, in the north part of DFW, and I lived in the southern part of DFW, having an 8 to 5 type, you know, cubicle manager role type job just didn't appeal to me. And I've learned a lot about it since, and I'm glad I didn't choose that route, because there was a lot of management going on, and I don't think I'd have been very happy. Also looked at, you know, taking a bank advisor type job. Just found out there was a lot of micromanagement in that, a lot of morning meetings you got to attend, a lot of, you know, minimum amount of calls, that kind of thing you got to make. And I think the biggest deciding factor that I made was, you know, when they had that conversation with you about, you know, that book that I built was actually worth something, and I was walking away from it. I remembered, I started thinking about all those doors that I knocked on to build some of that book, and all that networking I did, and just thought about, wow, I'd definitely be walking away from that, and walking away from a lot of hard work if I just let somebody else, and that those accounts kind of be scattered to the wind, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that was something that struck me was, you know, being at Merrill or even at Jones or any firm that has sort of a, hey, you better be at this number, it's easy to think that whatever production level you're at is not worth anything, or it's, you're not meeting someone's standards. But then you realize you get out into the marketplace and there's value. So that was a big thing to me. And from my perspective, when for those who don't know, I have helped manage a network of advisors with an independent large broker-dealer. And so, I was doing a lot of the recruiting at the time when Brian was looking at these options, and this was early 2013 that we talked. And we had gotten to the point with the size of our network where, we were still wanting to grow, but we were getting, at least personally, I was getting more, a little more, hey, if you want to join us, that's great. If not, I'll do my best to help you find the right choices. So it was sort of that point where you realize you don't need to add everybody. And I like to think I was doing a good job helping people look at the choices before, but it's, you may have hit that feeling in life where you realize if you don't need it, you sort of attract more type thing. So I remember having that conversation with you and then with your wife that, here are the options, but in particular with you of, hey, I don't care what you do, but man, don't walk away from it because you got something that's value. Go somewhere, get some value for your book, so to speak, for your practice. And then that, those manager jobs, we all have the rest of our life to go work for someone else in a corporate environment if we want to, or if we feel like we need to.
Right.
That's one thing. But yeah, I got excited thinking about, man, that's crazy because you got something that's valuable. And, a lot of corner office Merrill folks have built their businesses at least partially through collecting the scraps off people that leave. And when you add it all up, can be a few $100 million.
Yeah.
So, when we talked, I know it took you a while, at least several weeks before we got back together after the first initial conversation. I think from a production standpoint, you were at a point where you couldn't, hire a lot of people when you moved over or anything, but hire staff or, necessarily take down a lot of office space. But how did you decide, what the numbers would look like as you were analyzing that before you kind of went on your own as an independent?
I looked at, that moving that large account over was a big deal, and making sure that I, kind of run the numbers, and you were able to help me do a lot of that, run the numbers and figure out, okay, if I had to start out and go out on my own and, without an office or get some kind of small type, corporate type, not a corporate type, kind of a pay-as-you-go type office as you need it. I looked into that where I could, pay for client appointments, but then I really looked at my business and I was just kind of thinking that I spend a lot of time at kitchen tables and restaurants and that kind of thing, that my clients are fine with that. They're fine with meeting it. So what I kind of thought was I could start out working out of my house, doing a lot of the admin type work on the house, and then if I needed something, an office, I could kind of see how everything came over, how the production was when I got over, and then look at office space or a temporary type setup with an office as needed, that kind of thing. So that's kind of how it started out, and it was doable. It was tight. After the first couple of months.
Let me stop right there just to clarify that, Brian and I work together now, but at this point, as you and I know, obviously, that you were setting up kind of as an independent advisor in our network. So just to clarify, I probably should have said that about the initial conversations we had. But so, yeah, this was, coming over to be the man and have your own practice. And so this was independent of anything to do with me other than, I helped put together the network, but that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, so that's kind of how it started, is that, I came over on my own and, brought the accounts over. Everyone that I wanted to bring over, came over, and that made it really easy. So most of the numbers that I put together were pretty close to what I thought they would be. But like you said, I didn't have quite the revenue just to invest and help. Your group was instrumental in getting all those accounts over, and that was a nice benefit. But after that kind of died down, I kind of thought, okay, well, where do I go from here? And I did a lot of the paperwork myself, and honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of time just to go out and prospect. I probably could have hung around and done it for a while, but I really had kind of a thought about what I wanted the business to look like. And I didn't, after a little while, I was seeing that, okay, I could do this for a long time and not really see the growth that I envisioned. So I think, I know I had a lot of processes that I'd like to get in place, and you can't really do that stuff without some admin help or some time to do that. And I didn't feel like I could do that. And so that's when I guess we started working together and figuring out that that was a possibility going forward.
Right. Yeah, so on my end, this was probably, 6 months or so, maybe a little less after you came over in the spring of 2013. My business had kind of tipped over to a point where I didn't have a full-time dedicated assistant. I shared someone, and I realized either I needed a very good dedicated assistant or I needed to kind of find a junior advisor, someone to help me that could understood the business and could do more than just what an assistant could do. And so I was kind of debating which of those options to go down, and I kind of decided, well, whatever I can find first, that's kind of the route I'll go. So I mentioned that to you, and we kind of got deep into those conversations, and my thought has always been if we could align something where everybody is clear on what's expected, no arrangement's perfect, because I'm not, I like the idea of working by myself and having no one else to consult or worry about, or even though I was an Army officer, I don't necessarily want to get back into management, so to speak. But I had a need, and I think which was I needed help with advisor level tasks and support. And I had the business had grown. I'd acquired a couple small practices, and I had other responsibilities with the network. You obviously had the experience, and I love the idea that you had been on your own, even if it was only for a few months. You had shown the willingness and ability to do that, which, even if it doesn't work out for someone, if someone can't make it work, I think it shows something. Unless it's looking back, it was obvious it wouldn't have worked. But your situation, it was a risk to take. So, kind of perversely, I like the idea of someone who's willing to do that. And so, we started talking about the details. And why don't you talk about what was appealing to you from your standpoint as we, talked about working together?
I think the biggest thing that was appealing was just smoothing out the income. That was pretty big. We had, when we went to Merrill Lynch, we paid off a lot of that debt that we'd accumulated, and we had done well, but like I said before, it was just we weren't able to see any positive moves income-wise. It was always kind of a catching our tail type thing. So we went to the smoothing.
You caught your tail, or just chased it?
Right. Yeah, we were trying to catch our tail, I guess would be better. The cliche
did you
there.
Jump off the bandwagon?
Yeah, exactly. So we just the smoothing out the income was a big part of it. And I basically we were able to put something together that worked for both of us as kind of a trial period, and that's what I really liked as well. Is there wasn't any kind of contract. I didn't have to sell you my entire book immediately for this to work, or you didn't expect that I would just turn over every client relationship to you immediately. And that was something that worked out well, is that we both kind of had a trial period to say, okay, we'll figure out, see if this works, see if we can work together and go on. And I think that the biggest thing that made both myself and my wife comfortable was, you felt like we had all our questions answered early on from the very beginning. So if there's anything else that came up along the way, that you'd be very honest with us about how, what we could do or what our expectations were going forward. And I think that's what really appealed. And, we could, you had staff there with you that was already pretty familiar with everything. And that was big for me because it took some of the paperwork headache off my plate, where, if there was some kind of, some kind of project or some kind of prospecting idea I had, I felt like that we could go after that, and that was pretty big.
Right. Yeah, in some ways, I guess the model is very similar to the Wirehouse, the Merrills of the world join a team, which is that's nothing new there. I guess the difference is it's not I think the way we've set this up, especially early on, I like to think, okay, if I was in this position, what would be important to me, and having the ability to get out of it with no harm, no foul would be huge, and also the ability to continue to have that flexibility of where you work, how you work, and I was obviously, it was the first kind of experience for me having another advisor work directly for me, and so making sure that you could do what I thought you could do was paramount. So I think it was flexibility in both directions. And in being here, one of the big benefits we have being independent, we don't have that third party, Mother Merrill or whoever, in between that relationship. It's a very simple, getting the paperwork set up was a non-event. It's just we come to the arrangement and the terms and kind of set expectations, and certainly you can never predict exactly what will happen. But why don't you touch a little bit on the kind of the specifics of how we're set up in terms of where the money flows and why, and sort of some of the pros and cons of that.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Yeah. Well, we set up originally where it was just basically my production went over into kind of joined with Sean's production, and then he kind of paid me as a 1099 employee starting out, kind of 1099 contractor, I guess, starting out just basically a little bit higher than what my book would produce. So that was nice for us, is that we could have predictable income, and then we could kind of build the business together going forward. And that's what we started out like that, and it worked out well. Then we kind of decided that we wanted to go to more of a W-2 type employee, and after we figured out it worked pretty well, then we both kind of sat down and looked at the numbers of what my book was producing, and both came up with a number that we were both satisfied with, and that was pretty easy. That we didn't have to go back and forth and negotiate or anything like that. It was a good relationship we'd had from that point, so it was really easy to determine, okay, what's fair for both of us, and go from there. So,
so if you get a big new client or a insurance case, what happens to the revenue?
Basically, it goes to you, and that's one of the, I guess that could be a con, is that you could work on a lot of a case. A huge case and come about that it's a nice benefit to the senior advisor, but the smoothing out of the income is worth far more than that. I mean, and I have the relationship, and I think this goes back to having a good relationship with the senior advisor that you want to work for, is that if a huge case were to come in and I was to land it, I have no doubt that you'd probably say, okay, well, maybe we can adjust your income going forward, or something along those lines.
Right.
So, and that's just who you work with and how comfortable you feel with them.
Yeah, that's where I think like most things that you do, the trust factor is so it's 90% of it in a lot of ways. My thought there when we set this up in particular was, to have alignment, to make sure that there's not this mine, yours, and ours, because, we all know if over time, if I'm getting, 90% on something and 50% on something and 0% on something, right. I know the order that I'm naturally going to focus my time and energy. So,
yep.
I hope you bring in so much new business that, it's ridiculous for me to not double and triple your income, so to speak. But, obviously, that's for most of us, if we were going to be on that kind of growth path, we already would have, me included. So,
right.
Yeah, I think that worked out well. We started, if I'm not mistaken, when the latest go around, which has been a couple of years now, I think the way we got to that number was partially, hey, here's kind of where I need to be to break even and not have to worry about my income. And I felt good that, that was an adjustment up a little bit from where we started, but as someone, if working together, I know that feeling. I remember not too long before that being in the position of, kind of trying to get to that break-even number and thinking how
Right.
nice that would be if I didn't have to sweat it. Allows you to focus on getting stuff done and not, is this the right thing to be doing? And
Right.
so to me, that was a great meeting point. And again, it's a lot of art more than science, because the way we set your kind of comp plan up, a lot of it is you quote unquote pay for yourself. But what is that worth? Because, on your own, your payout was less than being plugged onto my little team.
Right.
And if you went off, if you'd go to work as working for the man somewhere in a cubicle, it'd be hard to replicate that income. So I kind of look at that. That's where each advisor, each team has to decide how they're going to approach things. I found this has been a phenomenal kind of, I'll call it middle ground, even though, it's not really a middle ground for you, because we're working together and your income month to month is going to go up based on your output, but hopefully you see,
Right.
Over time, we've kind of built enough momentum that there's growth. We'll touch on, we've got some advisors that we're, eventually we'll probably buy out, and that will help grow the pie, so to speak. What about the kind of the idea of being locked into an income? I think you kind of said, hey, if I can get to this level for 2 or 3 years, that's all I need for now. Have you ever thought about the down? Have you ever regretted that or worried that, oh man, I'm stuck, I don't have that upside that I used to have? Or does that come? Has anybody in your house, for example, mentioned that, or does it come up very often?
No, it hasn't. I think at least in our relationship with and this is a lot of the couples that we deal with, as long as your spouse is comfortable with what the current situation and they understand what's going on, I don't think if I told her about a huge case we brought in, I don't think she'd ever feel like, wow, I wish you'd have had that upside, because the month to month piece that she has, I guess, with knowing that everything's getting taken care of on a regular basis, I don't think I think that far outweighs it by any case that would come up. So no, we definitely haven't regret that, and I think it also helps in the sales process as well, because it there's no pressure I feel like to close someone right then.
Right.
And I think that's a part of human nature that, and I think, as I have friends and family that are still at other companies, that they'll say, how'd your month go? And I'm thinking, I have no idea. Well, like, when is the month over? I really don't know, and that takes a lot of pressure off me, but I'm thinking I can do a lot better overall if, because clients can sometimes sense that, that I'm not going to ever push anything because for any other reason than it's what's right for them,
Right. Right. And I think we all hope we're doing that anyways, but
Right.
It's just natural. That seeps in. I've gotten to the point where I don't feel too bad about, if something's delayed, it's delayed. And if it's the right thing, the client will see that, or, they'll ask the right questions. They'll ask questions and I'll try to re-articulate things. But, talking about the kind of the upfront money, I remember when I got the money, when I moved to Morgan Stanley, that same feeling, okay, I don't need to worry about, how much I produce in a given month from an income standpoint anyways, because, I'm okay. I've got money in the bank, a significant amount of money in the bank. It just changes your outlook. And, that's a nice place to be.
Exactly.
When you talk about the spouse relationship, it's funny. I think if my wife had really seen the fluctuations and volatility in my income early on in my career, there's no way I'd have made it this far, because she also very much values stability and predictability. And that's just not something you usually get in our business or any sales, incentive compensation business, which
Right.
obviously we're in, especially early on. Okay. Good. So I think, we've touched on a little bit of the transition and how we started to work together, and, our team has evolved just like any team in terms of what we do, and we've added some pieces here and there. But let's talk a little bit about the kind of the nuts and bolts of an advisor who's looking at maybe going quote unquote independent, would look at it. And the other reason I wanted to have you on is I think the about to be independent advisor might not consider all these other opportunities that might pop up just by them being independent. And again, it's hard to predict what those would be. But this, your situation is a great example of, hey, this has worked out pretty well. there's no way you could have predicted this or counted on it when you went independent. And I think
Right.
That's a fuzzy concept that's important to touch on. So how do you handle health insurance? How's your family get health insurance? We have a big corporate insurance plan, right, that you get to use?
No, we don't, and that a lot of people kind of figure out what they're actually paying for that, and I'm sure you can help people kind of with those numbers about health insurance, but it can be a big expense when you don't have the corporate structure, but I think the difference in the independent payout far outweighs that. But, that's something that you just have to figure out on an individual basis with your family. Figure out there's a lot of different options out there. And if it's nice if you have a spouse that's working that you can jump on their plan because that, typically is a little cheaper. But, the important thing is you have to find something that works. We did a couple of different options since then. We've gone with a private health care, and it was expensive, but I think the difference in payout far outweighs that. But we've looked at more of a corporate type structure for health insurance, and it just wasn't right for your business, and so we kind of found out a middle ground where we're with a kind of a pooling type plan now that works for us. That's a lot cheaper than private health insurance. So there's a lot of different options out there. We don't go to the doctor a lot or have a lot of visits, knock on wood, I guess, for, besides the occasional sick kiddo or anything like that. But I think if you talk to a lot of the independent advisors that are out there and kind of figure out what they're doing and what works for them, then I do think there's an option that works, even though that we don't have the subsidized corporate structure health insurance.
Gotcha. Yeah, maybe we might have a separate conversation at some point, kind of about the specifics of what you're using now, because I think that might be of interest to people as an alternative to the more traditional kind of what we all think of options. Okay, one question I didn't touch on earlier was, how did your clients take it when you left Merrill? Obviously, that's a brand everyone's familiar with. Moving twice, was that an issue? Or, it sounds like you already kind of spoiled the ending here that everyone moved, but did anyone say, hey, who's this company going to go with? I've never heard of them. What was the reaction like from your clients?
I felt like by that time my clients knew me. They didn't really care what logo was on the statement. They did jokingly a lot and ask where I was going to go next because that was 2 moves. But I let them know that the biggest thing I wanted to stress to them when I moved is that it's still me. It's still the same process. It's still me that's going to come see them. They're not going to have to go to, they're going to have to come to my house to meet with me or anything like that. I can still come to them, still give them the same the same treatment that I had before. And nothing's going to change for them. And I think they kind of saw that after the first move, that it's still going to be me. It's still going to be me taking care of them. They felt as comfortable as they did at the first place as they did the second, and they definitely do. Yeah. So yeah, to spoil the ending a little bit, everybody did come with me, and they're still with me today. And I guess that's another question. I guess is kind of how that changed, and my role with my own clients didn't really change. And you've been on a couple of client meetings, but I never felt like that okay, you need to be the lead point on this, point person on this relationship or anything like that. Like my daily activities didn't really daily activities, I guess, for my own book didn't really change, but that was something that was nice too, that I didn't feel like that you were ever going to come in and swoop in and want to take the lead on any of these relationships I'd had for years. Right. And that's another thing that's pretty important to do when you're looking for somebody to partner up with.
Yeah, I guess the benefit to me was I certainly didn't want more work. That was more people. Right. That was kind of going backwards. But I had to make sure that you felt like you had capacity to spend time helping me with what I needed help with, and I think certainly that's been the case. Right. And there are some things that if you specialize from a role standpoint on a team, when you specialize, you can apply that knowledge across everyone's clients. And there are some things that are obviously going to be, one-on-one conversations and meetings. You can't scale those, so from my perspective, there was no reason for me to, change how you dealt with your clients. We shared ideas, and you've been very open to new stuff. And I've tried to be as open as, I'm not the most flexible person, but that's, certainly I don't claim to know everything. That's for sure. Okay, good. Now, we don't need to get into the details of your income or anything, but I was doing the math, and it seems to me that if someone asked you what's your payout, that's kind of a weird question too, as well, right? Because you're on salary. But if you were to compare it to your income, I came out with somewhere around about 117% payout. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet deal.
Okay, so I know I've told you that before. That's good to. If anybody that you talk to is like, hey, well, what's your payout as an independent? I don't know, 120%, something like that. If nothing else, that should get their attention.
Right.
Results may vary. Don't try this at home.
Right.
And obviously, you do sometimes. I guess the downside, if I were in your shoes, would be, I know you're, hopefully I'm reasonable, but sometimes if I have a question, I know you answer it when it might not be the most convenient time to answer. Or if you're in the middle of putting the kids in the car to get, the wife and kids are going somewhere, I know we've joked about that. Hey, load little kids in a car, our wives who stay at home appreciate that. That's
exactly.
valuable. So, occasionally somebody has to wait, either me or her, and usually it's better if it's me, and I get that. But, I know there are times when as a quote unquote employee, you have to be ready to be on call, so to speak. So that's different. I don't want us to make it sound like it's not different, but it's the trade-offs are, I think the where you work, when you work, not having to sit in traffic or, put on a uniform / suit, just to sit. I love the idea of going to a downtown office in a suit, go up to the 15th floor just to make phone calls and be on an email. That cracks me up. But anyways, okay, so we'll make that the title of this episode, something about 117% payout. That sounds like a good advertising.
A hook right there,
and
right?
It's true. It's true. But
that's right.
You have to clarify a little bit. So what about not having a Christmas party or a blood drive? I mean, how are you doing without those kinds of things?
I should have added that to my cons list. I forgot about that part. That's a pretty big deal.
Our water cooler is not very. It's kind of far away.
That's right.
Now, I guess I'll kind of close or give you the lead in to close with, if there's someone that's kind of where you were, I guess 3 years ago now, 3.5 years ago, kind of stuck or starting to feel stuck or in the traditional, the wirehouse model, or if they just want to see what else is out there, and maybe they don't think they have the production to have their own independent practice, or no one's going to want them, so to speak. What would you do if you talked to someone that was kind of somewhat in your shoes from 3.5 years ago? How would you how would you tell them to, this your situation is not the ideal for everybody, but how would you tell them to go about, what would you have them do, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think first of all, in this business, we seem to build a pretty good network of people that we know. And I think that's where I'd start, is just reach out to those people you trust and see what options are out there. I think, I can just think of about 10 people offhand that are at different spots that I started with. It would be at Jones or at Merrill Lynch, and, reaching out to them and seeing what they like about their situation, and especially reaching out to a lot of those people that are independent and finding out what works for them. And you never know, something may come up with that opportunity that they may hear of somebody that's looking for a more junior advisor or is looking for somebody to fill that type of role. And sometimes you might feel like it's a waste of time, but just as long as you're making those connections, and something may come up. And I again, like you said before, I didn't know that this type of partnership was going to come up when I moved over. I kind of took a leap, and it was what was best for me at the time. But I think if you get all those kind of the numbers, get someone to go over the numbers with you. And I think that, that's the only way you can really effectively evaluate your next move, is what it's really worth to you, finding out what those numbers are and what it's really worth to you. So that's probably what I would suggest people do.
Good. Yeah, I think that's good advice. Networking can't consume all your time, but having people that you can trust their judgment and know they'll introduce you to what they think are decent potential opportunities is a huge, huge benefit. And certainly you can't create that network overnight if you don't have it, but I think almost all of us, even if we're kind of reclusive, have at least a few people whose opinions we trust. And again, I'm hoping this podcast and our website is a resource for people. I'm biased a little bit, but then again, in this context, my main goal is education. There are times when people shouldn't move. I think that'd be a great podcast episode of when you should not leave your current firm, or when you definitely should not go independent, because I've seen cases where it didn't work out, or I know if people had moved, it wouldn't work out. So,
right.
But again, having the people, we all know someone who's left the kind of the big firm feel. And again, they're easy to find. I cold called a lot of people when I was looking around 6-7 years ago.
Right.
So it's amazing how, we all like to talk about our own situation. So most financial advisors, I think, are willing to share their input and insight if you reach out to them.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there anything else we should touch on, or I think we've covered it? Any final thoughts you have?
I think that everybody is definitely riveted by this interview, and
most definitely, most certainly.
And I think we've covered it, and if people want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to give them my 2 cents as well. If they want something to look on the other side, we'd be happy to help.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks again for coming on to have this conversation, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Glad to do it. And there you have it. And as you can probably tell, this is not Sean, this is Brian. And if you've listened to us the whole episode, you're probably tired of hearing my voice, but I hope we provided you some good information about our situation. I think it works for both of us, and it just shows you kind of the freedom you have when you're independent, operating on, not kind of a handshake deal. So, again, hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have questions about going independent or our situation, you can always email Sean at ndfa.com or me at Brian with an I at ndfa.com. And that last part of that email is indyfa.com. And again, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. And if you go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes, we'd love that as well, good or bad. We love the feedback. And we'll see you next time.